Who is the wide receiver one
Oh boy.
in the 2023 NFL draft class? We are bringing this from a dynasty football perspective. So, who is the first wide receiver that we want to draft in dynasty rookie
Come on.
drafts and startup drafts? Before we get into it, drop a like to show some support on this video, support the
Come on,
channel,
baby.
subscribe if you like dynasty content, and comment down below for me. Let us know who is your wide receiver one in the 2023 class.
Come on.
Just so you guys know how this works. The way we do scouting is we scout 2021 film on players before they have their 2022 college football season.
Yep.
We come up with rankings and we try and give you guys information on those players. And then we restart that entire process at the end of December, beginning of January. We reevaluate all of these players
Right.
and consider their 2022 film, their stats, their analytics before coming to our rankings, our conclusions. So lots has changed, right? Since we first evaluated these players. And you and I don't tell each other what we think of players until we're completely done with the position.
Exactly.
Because we don't want to have any influence on each other's opinions on how we view players.
Correct.
So we were on a live stream pretty recently, and you had mentioned someone was your wide receiver one.
Correct.
Which surprised me because I know that has changed. We have different wide receiver ones, so we're going to give a take each as to why there are one, and then maybe have a little debate at the end. So who is your wide receiver one in this year's class, Badake?
Yeah, my wide receiver one is Quentin Johnston out of TCU, 6'4", 215 pounds. I gave you a little bit of, of his attributes, who he is as a wide receiver, and kind of the reasons why I like him, and kind of give you all my points. And just let you know, we're going to give you all our points as individuals, and then we'll have a debate at the end and just have a conversation, right? So, yes, Quentin Johnston, TCU, 6'4", 215 pounds, 21 years old, out of Temple, Texas. And some things that I really liked about his game that I think really sets him apart, right? So the following, I think he's a true X wide receiver with size and length, right? He is 6'4", 215 pounds, which is phenomenal. He broke out at the age of 19. He's a two-sport athlete, basketball and track. I guess you could say three because he does play football as well, right? He has the ability to play the X wide receiver, and the X wide receiver is a guy on the outside, and the slot wide receiver, which is a guy on the inside, right? He also has there's been reports already that he has run a 440-yard dash already, which I won't be surprised if he potentially gets into the high 4.3s. But even if he doesn't get there, 440 for someone that is 6'4", 215 pounds is absolutely incredible. And my guy can squat 575 pounds, which is crazy, which means he kind of gives you a bit of knowledge. Like, he has strong legs, right? He can pick up defenders, drag them, do all those things. Short area quickness adds another element to his game, which is phenomenal. It makes him dangerous in all levels of the field, which means that he's really quick. Once again, for a guy that's 6'4", 215 pounds, I think that's great. Excellent start-stop ability, lateral quickness, real quick on his feet, allows him to take off once again on any level, and dangerous in all levels of the catch point, which is before, during, and after the catch, meaning that no matter what point, what part of the progress that he is at on that route, what there is on the line, during the route, after the catch, during the catch, he is a threat on every single level, which I absolutely love. Route running is still developing, and I know that he can definitely improve his route tree, but I think as an overall route runner, I think he's phenomenal, in my personal opinion. But I do think that there is, I would say, one or two areas he can improve on. But I think he just had the route tree, right? And I think he utilizes his leverage to get separation in all types of moves. And he does have a signature move, which is a spin move. And if you watch any of his film, you can kind of see that very, very often, where he kind of catches the ball. As actually, when he gets off the line, he kind of creates leverage to move the defender in the way that he wants to spin the opposite way. So if you're on the line, he gets leverage and he kind of pushes the defender, let's just say, to the left. And then he's going to spin around, do a dig route, catch the ball, and then spin to the right, Which creates separation, which creates him to, once again, with his quick lateral movements, he just turns around and then gets off the line. So go watch that tape. I think that's phenomenal. His yards after the catch, ranked 9th out of 200 wide receivers in 2022, and that's a minimum of 55 targets, okay? So definitely keep that in mind. And the production so far in his career, his whole career, 34.7 is his dominator rating, which means that he's been productive all of his career. And mind you, you want to be at 25 and higher in the dominator rating as a college
Yeah,
wide receiver.
I would say at minimum you kind of want to be around that. Now it's a little
Yeah,
situational, like
exactly.
circumstantial, but
Exactly.
35 is kind of like that elite number. But I
100%.
would say you want to be at least over that 25
Yeah,
percent.
which I think is phenomenal. Once again, he's at 34. So if you have to be at 25 at least, he's at 34, nearly 10 spots higher or 10% higher than that. Johnson is 7th in missed tackles in 2022, and he led his team in the past 2 years in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And the first people that I think of, and which is my pro comp, I think it is a combination, in my opinion, of AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins. Mind you, we're not pro scouts, so we're just telling you how we feel on some of these players, right? And I think his ability to get off the line is something that reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins, and then his big body quickness of AJ Green, of how he just had some good twitchiness of him, excuse me. So those are the things I really liked about Quentin Johnson. And now I know I was talking about his production with a dominator rating. I kind of wanted to break that down. And I want you to follow me here because we're going to go on just a little bit of a journey. So I'll try to be quick with it. So when you look at the production and you kind of break it down since his freshman year, which is in 2020, mind you, he was 19 years old. He had 31% of the passing offense, which is extremely high. Once again, if you look at the total offense for a wide receiver at the age of 19, 31% of the passing offense, that's yards per game, and 22% of the passing touchdowns. That's in 2020. 2021, 33% of the passing offense, and then 50% of the passing touchdowns, right? And then 2022, which was just his junior year, it takes a little bit of a bigger step at 35, the passing offense, and then nearly the same thing with the touchdowns. Yeah. So when I'm looking at the production and I'm looking at it, and obviously this is who's your wide receiver one, and I think we all know who the other guy is, right? I won't say his name, but I kind of was looking at the whole package, right? So I'm looking at athleticism and analytics. And when we compare both of them, you look at Quentin Johnson's and then you're saying it's a bit underwhelming, right? You kind of compare them to, it's like, dang, he's a wide receiver one and he only had 60 receptions, just over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more. But I think with the context and everything that, when I was looking at both of these guys, I was like, okay, they have the production, they have the athleticism. What sets them apart, right? And I think what really sets them apart was everything around them, okay? And I thought that it was a little bit of a disadvantage when it came down to comparing someone like Quentin Johnston to Jackson Smith, right? So once again, go with me on a little journey here because I know a lot of people may not like this, but this is why I have him as the number one and why I believe it's a little bit skewed in some areas is because of the quarterback play and the team overall. And I know that doesn't necessarily impact of who that player is as a prospect, but I think the quarterback play is something that's really massive and the team around him, and the prospects and everyone that was helping them, right? So when I was looking at it, I said, okay, I am seeing the quarterbacks. And I went to the quarterbacks to say, okay, how significant is the difference in quarterbacks? And I'm looking at, passer ratings, big time throws, just IQ in general, right? So when I went to break these guys down, which is CJ and Max, and mind you, I did it for 2 years because we didn't see Jackson in year one or in 2022, right? So in 2021, let me tell you the passing grade according to PFF in 2021. CJ was 4th out of 200 quarterbacks, and Max was 94th out of 200 quarterbacks, which is significant, meaning that CJ is a significantly better passer, which I think we can all say it's true. I think we know that. We all knew that Ohio State has a significantly better program than TCU. In 2022, CJ was in passing grade was 11th out of 200, and Max was 58. And mind you, passing is the everything encompass, ball placement, and I know it's kind of hard to kind of equivalent, like to break it down because that's in passing rating for not just Quentin Johnson. It's like for the whole team, correct? So I know it's a little bit skewed, but I think it's a massive factor of why Quentin, I think, still has potential edge because he didn't have the caliber quarterback and the caliber of the NFL team that Jackson Smith and Jigba has played for. And then when I look at big time throws, which is when you go on PFF, which I think is a phenomenal resource, a big time throw is a pass with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further down the field and or in a tighter window. Mind you, it's still hard to kind of break down how much percentage these guys got, because they don't break it down like that on PFF. CJ was 6th out of 190 quarterbacks. Max was 30th out of 190 quarterbacks. And I do believe that plays a massive factor when you look into someone like Quentin Johnson in the quarterback play and the whole of the offense, because we know TCU is not great, right? TCU was surprisingly this year in 2022. I think no one would have expected and once again, I'm not someone that's.
You're right. You're right in the sense that TCU was unranked coming into the season.
And
so there wasn't expectations they would make it.
Exactly. There wasn't the expectation that they were going to go this far and be the team that was going to the national championship. And CJ is a guy that, he came in, he was the guy that was clearly going to be the one right after Justin Fields, and he was going to be the starter, and, he was the guy. So I think all those things come into account, which in my perspective, when I look at the production of Jackson Smith and the athleticism of Jackson Smith, it's great. When I look at the production of Quentin Johnson and I look at the production and the athleticism of Quentin Johnson, I do believe he has the edge because of the athleticism. Quentin Johnson is still athletic. The production, I think, is on par because of how he kind of developed each and every year. And he was taking, a massive percentage of, I'm talking about Quentin Johnson, of the, his college career. But the athleticism, I think, will put him to the next level, being 6'4", 215 pounds, running a 4.4 nearly. Obviously, we get the official stats. And those are the areas that I believe he's more successful in than Jackson Smith and Jigba. And look, there's no doubt that Jackson is talented, but I do believe there's some little areas, just like any other wide receiver, to improve on. I think the lack of speed is pretty significant for a guy like Jackson Smith, and I think he's very limited at times to be in the slot, even though we saw him out wide a little bit in his sophomore year. And we only seen one season of production, one true season of production. So once again, I love both of these guys, but if I had to choose one, with everything that I just said, athleticism, production, I am taking Quentin Johnson.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think he did really well there. Definitely interesting to see, the differences between quarterback play. I have some rebuttals.
For sure.
But we will leave those rebuttals until I finish talking about JSN. So my wide receiver 1 in this year's class is Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I personally believe that it's much easier to hate on a player when he's not on the field. I feel like just this time last year, we were talking about him as one of the best wide receiver prospects we had seen in the last 5 years. And he doesn't play this year. And now all of a sudden, I think right now we're seeing another rise. But in late December, people were hating on him in almost all the comments. And I think it's because he wasn't able to play. So let's talk about him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, to me, is one of 2 cannot miss prospects in this year's Dynasty rookie draft class. That other cannot miss prospect would be Bijan Robinson. Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously out of Ohio State, 6'1", 220 pounds. He's coming out as a junior. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Should we be skeptical about Jackson Smith and Jigba because of his 2022 season? Because of the injuries, because you didn't get to see him play, and therefore that led to no production for you to really look at? Well, what do we know about hamstring injuries? We know that hamstring injuries, the only cure to them is time. We see this time and time again in the NFL, in college football. You just cannot push back from a hamstring injury. That is just the realistic outlook of a hamstring injury. And I personally believe, because there was a little bit of hate as well on Jackson when he decided not to play in the college football playoffs, I personally believe once he realized he wasn't coming back, his focus completely switched to the NFL draft. So personally, I'm not going to dock him for this year, for the 2022 season. And I'll just ask everyone out there, if you're docking him for this year, well, let me ask you, did you dock Jamar Chase because he didn't play during that COVID year? Did you dock Jalen Waddle before Jalen Waddle was drafted because of his injuries? Because I think the people who did that, and that was a real argument for people in those classes, I think they missed out on incredible players. The reality is, this is the game of football. People get injured and they need time to recover. That is just humanity, okay? Let's talk about Jackson Smith, the prospect. Again, I think he's one of only 2 can't miss prospects in this year's draft. I think it's a great draft, by the way. I just think as far as like you can't miss if you draft him, That's Bijan and Jackson Smith for me. Young breakout age at the age of 19. Extremely gifted route runner and separator. In fact, you should go watch the video of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson talking about Jackson Smith's route running ability, because I personally think he is in that category, if not a better route runner than those two guys who are very good, if not elite route runners in their own right. Especially at the line of scrimmage is where I see him dominate. We're talking about a player just with his footwork where he can get open in the matter of a second. Just with his footwork, just with his twitchy movements off the line of scrimmage. I mean, and because of his deception, because of the way he manipulates defenders, he is always given a cushion because defenders genuinely have no idea where this guy's going to go at the break point of his route. So as far as being a route runner, I believe he is just as good, if not better, than some of our favorite route runners in last year's class, which was a very good class, and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Now let's talk about his hands. Jackson consistently showed incredible hands throughout his 2021 season. All right, excelling as a contested catcher, snagging deep balls over the middle, shoulder fades, catching in traffic. He posted an elite 84.8% reception percentage in 2021. He also posted an elite contested catch percentage at 90%, which was number 1 in the country. He caught 9 of 10 contested catches. For reference, his teammates, Garrett Wilson, he was at 61.5%. Chris Olave at 62.5%. How about some of the other guys in the draft? Drake London at 65.4%. Treylon Burks at 43.8%. He has incredible hands. Incredible hands. You see that on film. Now let's talk about after the catch. In 2021, Jackson Smith-Njigba put up 8.3 yards after the catch per reception, which was 10th best in the nation out of 244 wide receivers who had a minimum of 55 targets, I believe. Treylon Burks, Jamison Williams are some of the only names that were better than him that year. Both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, they didn't even crack the top 50. Okay. Add to that he's an above average and very willing blocker. You're talking about a player that from day one is on the field probably 60 to 80% of the snaps, right? One of those players who potentially breaks out early in his NFL season as a rookie. Now, let's talk about the speed, because I know you mentioned it. A lot of people are mentioning it. Well, he doesn't have 4.3 speed, does he? No, but my comps for him are all players who didn't have anywhere near 4.3 speed. And I think we all can agree that speed is one of the, I'm not going to say it's one of the most overrated, but when scouting, I think it's one of the traits that makes people miss out on really good talents. My pro comp for Jackson Smith, Keenan Allen, Larry Fitzgerald, Cooper Kupp. You're looking at their 40 times, Keenan ran a 4.71. Larry ran a 4.63. Cooper Kupp ran a 4.62. What will Jackson Smith run? I don't know, but I think it's going to be better than that. I think he's going to be somewhere around like a 4.48, maybe a 4.51 in that territory. Even if he runs worse than that, I'm not worried about it because you don't need speed when you're an elite separator, when you have great hands, right? Most important thing to me in a prospect is their ability to separate, their route running ability. Can they manipulate defenses? And then also what they can do after the catch and their hands. So let's just quickly remember, I know you probably know already, but let's quickly remember the elite season he had in 2021. Okay, 95 receptions. In college, that's like so stupid how incredible that is. 95 receptions, that's ridiculous. On a team that had 2 first-round picks, he had over 1,600 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. If we're looking at receptions, 220 wide receivers in 2021 had a minimum of 55 targets. He was 8th in the nation in receptions, while being 30th in targets. Do you guys realize how crazy that is? 30th in targets, but 8th in receptions.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Talk about elite production, efficiency. In receiving yards, he was 3rd. In touchdowns, he was 28th. All right. Now, keep in mind, the kicker here, which is what's so crazy, is that he did all of that in 2021 while competing with Garrett Wilson, first-round pick. Chris Olave, first-round pick. Marvin Harrison Jr., potentially the 101 in 2024 drafts, maybe after, Caleb Williams, maybe 102, but one of the best wide receiver prospects. We're all obsessed with him. Emeka Egbuka, likely a first-round pick in 2024. So he put up those numbers against those elite talents. And you might be saying, well, Wilson and Olave didn't play in the Rose Bowl game. Okay, so let's take away his 15 reception, 347-yard performance in the Rose Bowl, which, by the way, is incredible on its own that he was able to do that. And he still leads the team in receptions by more than 10 receptions. And he still leads the team in receiving yards by over 200 receiving yards. Okay? We're talking about proven talents. And as a younger player, he demanded more. Now, there's an opposite side of that coin. Well, Olave and Garrett Wilson, they obviously help take coverages away from him. Yes, but why are we docking a player who's in a good position? Like, he's just a good, elite prospect out of high school, and now he's turned into an elite prospect going into the NFL. So lastly, let's talk about how he can win in the NFL. Well, I've talked about some of my pro comps before. Route running. Let's look at Keenan Allen, one of my pro comps. I think that Jackson Smith, like Keenan Allen, can be one of those 100 receptions a year type wide receivers, which means in your fantasy leagues, he's going to have a safe PPR floor. And I think similar to some of those guys, he can translate in the slot and on the outside. He's also a very good contested catcher. I talked a little bit about Larry Fitzgerald. Now, Larry Fitzgerald is one of the best to ever do this. Huge hands, okay? And I'm not saying they're exactly a perfect comp, but I see some similarities in their game. So he will be able to be a reliable wide receiver, which means he will earn targets. Yards after the catch. I compared him a little bit to Cooper Kupp. How about Amon-Ra St. Brown? I see some similarities as well. His open field IQ is ridiculous, okay? At times, during his route, he seems to even plan out after the catch while he's in his route. Like, he knows how he's going to use leverage against defenders to get into the open space. It's ridiculous. So, for me, Jackson is my wide receiver 1. I think he is one of 2. Again, cannot miss prospects. I've said that I've said that so long now, and I just feel like I'm oversaying it, but I want to clarify. And let's just talk about why I prefer him over a guy like Quentin Johnston. I like Quentin Johnston. I think he has a ridiculously insane ceiling. I think my comps from him as well. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green. We had the same comps. I think he can become that player. But I think the floor is much, much lower for a player like Quentin Johnston. There is potential for a boom-bust player here, and even boom-bust games. There's potential for, I think he's very good after the catch, so he won't have those games, but there still is potential for him to have some games where he disappoints you, and then next week he'll go off for you, right, in the NFL. So, and the last 2 things I was going to say on him is, I don't think he's anywhere near the route runner that Jackson Smith and Jigba is. And for me, one of the most important parts about getting open in the NFL is your route running ability, right? If you're able to manipulate defenders, you're typically able to get open. And Quentin can improve in those areas. I see the potential, but I don't think he's anywhere near the route runner that Jackson is. And for his size, there's too many body catches. We need to improve those hands, which again can happen with good coaching. But those are some of the reasons I prefer him over Quentin, prefer Jackson. So why don't we go ahead and move into the debate part here. I took down some notes.
Sure.
When you were saying some of the reasons why you prefer Quentin over Jackson, and I'll just have a quick rebuttal here.
Sure.
So one of the things that you had mentioned is the teams around these players, right? Jackson is in a better situation, better quarterback play. Yeah. I think the opposite side of that coin for me is, what was the competition for Quentin Johnston for work at TCU? He didn't have to compete with anyone near the talent of Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Mika Ibuka. Like, he didn't have those type of people to compete with. So it's hard because Johnston's clearly the wide receiver 1 there, the main focus. Like, the day he steps on campus, it's like, this is our guy. And when you're at Ohio State, you got to earn targets with all the talent that's consistently funneling through there. So I find it hard to discount him because he was in a better situation. But I get where you're coming from. That would just be the opposite side of the coin for me, like how I'm viewing it.
For sure. I completely understand what you're saying, because I thought about that, and I was thinking about, okay, like, he's not going against anyone. He was going against probably like 3-star recruits, 3-star wide receivers. Yeah. He's not necessarily someone that is going against these 5-star guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And, I think honestly, I don't have like something to say like, hey, this is the reason. And I think that's what's so hard about a scenario like this, because I like Jackson Smith and Jigba as much as you, but I think Quentin Johnston didn't have the opportunities in the team play, and that's just unfortunate. I think that happens to everyone as a prospect, like
exactly. What would happen to Quentin if he was at Ohio State? What would
Exactly.
happen to Jackson Smith if he was at TCU? We'll
exactly.
never know.
We'll never know, and I think that's what's so exciting to me about Quentin, because what happens is when he does get a high caliber quarterback and Jackson Smith doesn't. What happens?
I
if
agree.
He goes, what
the
happens if he
upside
goes to
is
a team?
huge.
Exactly.
But I think the floor is so much safer for Jackson. Okay, a couple other things you talked about, lack of speed. I think I addressed that with my pro comps. You don't
For
need
sure.
speed.
100%.
Like the other areas he can succeed in. Talked about him playing mainly in the slot. I believe that's one of the things that a lot of people are going to use this year. Well, we haven't seen him outside.
Yeah.
Well, what do you need to succeed outside? You need the ability to manipulate defenders. You need to be a good route runner, and you need good hands.
For sure.
Speed helps, but I think like Justin Jefferson wasn't the fastest player on the outside. I'll have to double check what his 40 was, but I believe that he can make that transition outside purely because of those two areas, his hands and his route running ability. When you're talking about Justin Jefferson, he ran a 4.44. So it's not like Jefferson's one of these 4.3 guys. So I think he can play outside personally, but I also don't think if he plays in the slot, that's going to be harmful to his career.
No, for sure. I think there will be limitations in the NFL team that he goes to where like he's just going to be seen in the slot, which is not bad. It's not like Jackson Smith needs to have the versatility like 50-50 out wide in the slot. I just think that he'll be limited there to where like Quentin Johnston has opportunities to go left, like out, slot, in, out, whatever the case may be, which kind of gives him more of an opportunity to potentially get the ball, more opportunity to be more productive onto an NFL team. And look, once again, there's so many things that Jackson Smith and Jigba does right. Like it's phenomenal.
To be clear, we both love
100%
guys.
100%.
We both love them. We're just trying to debate why we believe they should be the number one.
Yeah. And look, for me, Quentin, I just think what really sets him apart is I think it's pretty unique the type of player he is, right? The 6'4", 215, the big body guy. So you're saying, I'm thinking of someone as big. Look, I know I'm going to throw out a name. I know people are going to be like, this is crazy. I'm not comparing him to him, but I think where he can be, the production that he can get, and the weight, the size, the big body size that he is, just reminds me of like what Devontae Adams is. Like Devontae Adams is like 6'3", 6'4", an incredible route runner, a guy that
Devontae Adams plays in the slot as well.
Exactly, and that's like the vision and the way I can see
You're
him
saying
going.
Quentin can be in the slot.
Exactly, he can be that production in the slot, and I see that happening with Quentin. And I think that's what's so phenomenal. And you know what? I probably would agree. I feel like Jackson Smith is the safest floor. Like he has seen the production, and we've seen the production out of Ohio State wide receivers where, we're looking at, okay, Quentin Johnston tops really high ceiling because of his size, because of his speed, because of what he's done. And then you kind of look at the TCU history. It's like, damn.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't bring it up at all. Because I do like Quentin Johnston, and I think the whole he's not from this school has bad history. I think that debate is stupid.
I think it is too, and that's why I just brought it up now, but that wasn't a point in my take because
for sure.
I know a lot of people in the fantasy community are going to say, well, Jalen Reagor and Doxson just wasn't the best. The history there's only 2 wide receivers. How many TCU wide receivers have gone in the first? Sure. That's literally only 3. I looked it up, and I was going to put it in my point, and I was like, okay, this is kind of stupid.
Go look up where Jerry Rice went to college and tell me the other guys who've been successful there.
Exactly. Like, there's so many different ways to kind of manipulate it.
I wanted to quickly, just on the whole, because you had mentioned that you think Jackson might struggle, like he might be limited to the slot. You had said that in one of your rebuttals. Let me ask you this. Do you think Justin Jefferson is a good outside wide receiver? It's like, obviously, yes. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
He's one of the best, if not the best in the NFL right now. I mean, that's a conversation for a different day.
For sure.
What if I told you that in Justin Jefferson's last year at LSU, he played 98.3% in the slot?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But what was he good at? Great route running, good hands, and he translated on the outside. So one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now, again, played 98.3% out in the slot his last year. So, and to be fair, like in 2018, he played mostly out wide. But what I'm trying to say is, to me, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to see Jackson outside because I think he can succeed outside. It's just one of those things where you're going to have to either trust in his abilities or you don't think he can do it. You know, it's
and not completely. I agree, and I think my biggest thing is like I think Jackson Smith can do it, and I think they can both do it at any point in time. And I think what we get so scared of, I mean, I think what the Dynasty community, and maybe it's just me, maybe I don't want to put anyone's name out there, but I just feel like we see the production in a high caliber school, and we just automatically think this is for sure. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes we're saying it just feels comfortable to go with the guy that is more, not saying you, I'm just saying like the fantasy community is like Jackson Smith, he's played with the top quarterbacks, he played with the best prospects. Doesn't mean he will be successful. I think he will be successful.
Sure.
I
just think the opposite side of that coin is
it's always the coin, you know, like it's always
you've seen against some of the best NFL talents that he's able to hang with him, if not be better. But I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I agree that no one watching this should take what I'm saying and make it their truth. Take what I'm saying, take what Badake's saying, and then go watch them and decide for yourself. But these are the reasons that we have chosen our wide receiver ones. I just want to quickly say on Jordan Addison, because some people might comment, Jordan Addison's wide receiver one. Right. For us, no, he's not, but that's okay. Like, we always welcome differences of opinion. I know that you and I are on the same page here, but our biggest concerns for Jordan Addison is the size. I guess you could say the same was with Devonta Smith. People are going to say that. The difference is Devonta Smith was a very good contested catcher, right?
Right.
Jordan Addison struggles when he has to body someone. He's not a good contested catcher. In fact, he had a 22.2% contested catch rate in 2022, which is 206th of like 220 something wide receivers in college football who saw 55 targets this year. Like it was very bad, if not atrocious, to say the word. And I think the other thing that we really worry about is his ability versus press coverage. There's not many games where he's facing press, but when he struggles to fight off these defenders, man. He's a very good route runner. And when he has space, he's one of the best route runners in the class. But against press coverage and against those big body defensive backs, he could potentially struggle. And we see the same thing after the catch as well for him. There is no real go-to move for him to get into the open space after the catch. He has good speed, he has good burst, but he's taken down pretty easily if a defender gets their hands on him. So we more see him as an elite wide receiver 2 in the NFL, not someone who you want to rely on as a dominant 1. But we could be wrong. That's just the way we're viewing it right now. And he probably is going to get the draft capital for people to view him as a 1 anyway. So we could be wrong.
I just think with the body mold, and the history, we said it, the best mold and the best comparison is Devonta Smith, the way he does. And we've seen Devonta Smith struggle in his first year, and maybe that was because quarterback play. Maybe that was because he was the wide receiver
quarterback play improved for sure.
Yeah, and like
Jalen Hurts is a different guy this year.
100%. So I think there's a lot of factors.
But I think the foundations of them as receiver, like as catchers, just as a contested catcher, with hands, everything, it's not as good.
Right. Agreed.
Devonta Smith.
It was good.
Yeah.
Hey, Quentin Johnson.
I think this was
Jackson Smith. I mean, I would say pick your poison. I think in my personal opinion, I think both of them are going to be successful. I think no matter where Quentin goes, I think he could be successful. Same thing with Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think some people see it differently, where I think it has to be the perfect situation for Quentin, and no matter where Jackson goes, he's going to be amazing.
That's kind of where I am.
Yeah. So like, I think Quentin.
I think you brought some really interesting and cool stats today. So well done. I mean, I didn't know some of that information. That was cool to see. And I'm still a huge Quentin guy. You're still a huge Jackson guy.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have this debate. Why don't you guys comment down below and let us know who your wide receiver 1 is in this year's class? And like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/fantasylandfam.